Greetings to you all today. It's a little bit earlier this morning, but we have to do this while we can. As you know, this is now the third part in a premonition series, a way that the Lord had dealt with me earlier in my life, and there is a purpose to this. I'm not just sharing events that happened or certain things, but it's a way that the Lord leads us. It's a way that our convictions grow and the ministry grows. And I tend to be much more serious about the time that we live in, about things such as chastening or judgment or this or that. And now you're going to see some of this underlying factor. And we'll be building to that through this series. And this is the third part in this series. Excuse me. As you know, I had already spoken about the dream that the Lord gave me and also the ominous feeling when I was unknowingly being threatened at our home in the woods around it, in a way that I can't identify because God rescued me from it. But then also I talked about the premonition of death, what I recognize as a premonition of death at age 23, where I kind of opened myself to try and define when that time would be based on the little survey the teacher had given to everyone on paper. I didn't say these things out loud. But in this time, as you'll see, with this certain event, I mean, these were things that I did not open myself to. I was being led in. So there's kind of a dynamic through these over the years. Some of these things I was seeking more in the flesh without knowing exactly what I'm doing. Some of these things God was interjecting. And so it took a long time and the chastening of the Lord until he would set me on the right course. But it has been a very long time in the making, unfortunately. But we are saved by grace alone. So we have to think at this time, no doubt through the years, there were numerous small times of being led, of feelings guiding me to do one thing or another. But at this particular time, I was a pretty typical teenager, unfortunately, a Christian teenager, at least by profession. And I believe I was. Nonetheless, at this time, I'm 16 years old, and I'm just in my first driving year. And this is a winter night. This is late in January. It's that month of January again, but it's late in January. It's a Saturday night, and I have a date. It's not a romantic date. It's not anything that, I look to. It was something to do. I'm 16, and I wanted something to do. I think this girl that I knew who was a good friend and I were going to go bowling or something like that. So I really looked forward to Saturday night, but we had snow, and it was an icy snow. As a matter of fact, as I remember, it was probably around 3 inches or so. It's laying up on the roads. The roads where we were not maintained very well. It took a while till the plows got out there. And for some reason, I don't know how this had come about, but it had come about that my father would be the one to say whether or not I could use the car and go out. There was a car designated for my use, but of course it was still in his insurance in his name. And so he was not home at the time. He was up the road helping my half-brother, who's 10 years older than me. His name is Rick. And Rick was building his own house. My father had given him some of the land that we had to build a house on. And he actually built the house entirely himself. He's very gifted in that kind of contractor way. But my father was up the road helping my brother with something. I don't know what. But as a 16-year-old teenager, and I'm like, all right, Dad isn't here. He can't tell me no. I'm going to go out. I'm going out. I'm going to go out tonight. That's it. I'm 16. We're going to have fun Saturday night, blah, da, 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 da. This is the typical way. I could tell that my mother didn't really want me to go, but she wasn't saying anything. Somehow this had fallen to my father, and I don't know how that ever came about. And so as I was considering this at one point, now the time is approaching to leave. And all of a sudden I say, all right, my father isn't here to tell me what to do. And all of a sudden it weighed on me, like, just this weight. It was something in a way that's inexplicable for a fleshly driven teenager, to say, and there was almost like this impression, yes, Your father isn't here. All the responsibility is yours. And there will be a time when he is not there to make the decision for you. And this really, it weighed on me so heavily. I was standing at the time, kind of in the process of starting to get ready to go. I just sat down on the bed. It just hit me so hard. And I realized this was true. And so I called up and I canceled the date. Just under 3 months later, my father had a massive heart attack while he was on a business trip in New York. It was someplace, I think it was Fulton, New York, in western New York, I believe, New York State. And he did not die from that. It was a very bad heart attack. For a couple months, he did not recognize us, his family. He did not die right away. It was about 19 more months, I think, until he passed away. There was a whole process with this. But his time of making decisions in my life was over. I mean, he really, his was just a struggle with health and recovery, surgery, and things like that for the rest of his life. As a matter of fact, I found out that just before Christmas of the preceding year, he had had a physical from his company, and the doctor had told him he needed major heart surgery. But he didn't want to go into the hospital over the holidays. He wanted to be with his family. So he had put that off for 4 months, and it caught up to him. In this instance, the doctors were spot on with their analysis. And so this was, again, one of those warnings. I can't say it wasn't something I opened myself to, but one of the major things I could identify through those years, because as I had said before, I didn't come to think of them as premonitions until college. And so I hope you see that God truly is preparing us. All of these things were preparation. We need to trust him, the unseen God, to make a difference in our very visible lives. May God bless you today.